we're not really familiar with how small drones can actually change the game. Now, I'm also a believer that if the United States or NATO ever fought in a conflict, drones would be an issue at the tactical level, but they wouldn't necessarily be an issue at the strategic level, because when it comes to how NATO operates, we create total air dominance over an area. And people might launch drones, but they're going to have to do it without generator fuel, and they're going to do it hungry. General Winter.
Based on current battlefield trends and internal pressures, what would be the real indicators that Russia's frontline stability is breaking down, and how likely is a broader systematic crisis for Putin's regime in the near term?
I think a good signal for a breakdown would be, I guess twofold. The first would be the number of Russian soldiers who are self-surrendering to the Ukrainians, just because they want to get warm. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm very cold. I don't have the proper equipment. I need to get warm. You can be a very loyal guy, but if you haven't been fed in a couple of days and you don't have any way of staying warm, and the Ukrainians are 300 meters away and they're warm, that's going to be an issue. The other thing that you might see is if the supply situation gets worse, and I've said this before, that once a soldier is only about 6 meals away from being a bandit. If you have a gun and you're hungry, pretty soon you're going to have some food. So the next thing, if you start seeing Russian soldiers essentially leave their post in order to go search for food because they're not being supplied correctly, or search for warm clothing, you're definitely going to see that could be an indicator that Russian lines are under extreme stress. As for breaking, that might be a different story. You're going to have to break a lot of people, but it's certainly something that could happen.
And for final question, based on recent reports that Ukrainian drone operators defeated a NATO battalion during recent NATO exercises, what do you think is the key challenge facing NATO, which appears to have been completely unprepared for a real-world threat?
So I think that the challenge for NATO is training. So while I was doing research for this video, I found a picture of what's called a TOC, or Tactical Operations Center. And it was basically a tent with radio antennas sticking out of it, and there was a big old Humvee parked next to it. And on the battlefield of Ukraine, that TOC, that Tactical Operations Center, would get detected and struck within literally minutes. Ukraine has figured out how to mask, how to hide themselves from the adversary. And we're still trying to figure that out. And I think a lot of it is that when it comes to actual training with drones, there is risk associated with training with drones. Like, for example, if you're going to fly a drone over soldiers while you're performing Overwatch, or even if you're practicing a mission, right? Like, I'm going to use my drone to recon the opposing force. I'm going to send the drone over the hill to recon the opposing force. Well, every American commander does what's called a risk assessment. And it's a worksheet, and if a drone falls on someone's head, that's a high risk, because it could kill the guy. It's catastrophic outcome, and the likelihood of it happening would be occasional. Because occasionally drones might fall out of the sky. You lose control, falls out of the sky, hits a soldier. If that happens, you're going to be standing, your battalion commander is going to be standing in front of the division commander explaining why a soldier died because a drone fell out of the sky. So nobody really wants this level of risk. And so you might train with drones, but you're not training with them to their full potential. Like, let's say you have a drone flying, protecting a landing zone where helicopters are coming in. Deconfliction is really hard. And if a helicopter, as it's landing, slams into a drone, that's going to be a problem. That helicopter could go down. A lot of people could be in a heck of a lot of trouble. If a helicopter is damaged or even destroyed after it hits a drone. So, what's the end state? Well, you just don't use drones if you have helicopter operations going on. What's called the ground littoral environment is really hard to deconflict right now. So I think because we know the drone threat is there, but we don't really practice with it, we're not really familiar with how small drones can actually change the game. Now, I'm also a believer that if the United States or NATO ever fought in a conflict, drones would be an issue at the tactical level, but they wouldn't necessarily be an issue at the strategic level, because when it comes to how NATO operates, we create total air dominance over an area. And people might launch drones, but they're going to have to do it without generator fuel, and they're going to do it hungry. Because we are hitting every single supply truck on the way to the front lines. Now, in a COIN or counterinsurgency environment, when you have support from the local population, that could be a little bit different. But the fact of the matter is that once you've established air dominance, it's pretty much all over, at least at the strategic or maybe even the operational level. The tactical level drones can still be a problem. So in some ways, NATO is prepared because the way we fight is totally different than the way Ukraine fights. But at the same time, at the tactical level where the rubber hits the road, when it comes to actually launching and recovering drones and being aware of this changing environment where you are constantly being viewed, that isn't something that NATO is necessarily ready for.
Ryan, thank you so much for your analysis, for your brilliant thoughts, and for this great conversation. I want also say thank you for your major fundraiser, and you can donate on this fundraiser in pinned comment of this video for Ukrainian generators and EcoFlow stations, and in description of this video we have a link. Ryan, thank you so much, and see you soon.
All right, thank you so much for having me.